At the end of Batman Begins in the third act, when Ra's al Ghul and Batman are fighting, Batman reminds him of the instruction he gave him when he was training him. Did you ever mind to learn your own surroundings? Well, didn't James Gunn ever learn to delete his posts on social media? We'll be looking at some old resurfaced Facebook comments that seem to be criticising Christopher Nolan's first two Batman films. A reminder, Christopher Nolan is a billion times the director that James Gunn will ever be. So if this is true, this just shows you how arrogant and deluded James Gunn is. And also, a platform called The Dark Place has posted an article claiming that Christopher Nolan is no longer directing the Batman 2. What the hell is going on over there at DC Studios? Welcome back to Movies TV Mad. I am Mick, your host of the most just ask your girlfriends and your wives. You can follow me on X, Twitter at Movies TV Mad, and on Instagram and on Threads at Movies TV Mad. X on TikTok, Mad Mickey's Wild, and on Snapchat, BMouth60 Mick, your host with the most. A very warm welcome to Friday's edition of the DCU Daily. Now, at some point today, there will be a Peacemaker 2 teaser trailer. I haven't decided if I'm actually going to be reacting to this teaser. I'm still thinking about it, by the way. By the time this uploads, it will certainly be online. We'll see what happens. I may talk about it on tomorrow's DCU Daily. We'll have to wait and see. But we got some real news today to sink our teeth into, and it's serious news, and we really have to analyse it. So, first of all, this comes from Christopher Nolan's... Now, this is a Christopher Nolan ex-Twitter account, not run by Chris, but it's obviously a fan of Christopher Nolan, and he's very, very good. A 2012 comment James Gunn made on his old Facebook account criticising Nolan's first two Batman films has resurfaced, and I quote, "I have problems with both of Nolan's films. I don't think either one is classic, and I don't even really think Batman Begins is good, despite being the first cinematic dark take on Batman." So what? Stallone's Judge Dredd was the first dark take on Judge Dredd. The movie is awful. Now, I'm assuming he means Judge Dredd is awful. Now, it's clear here that he's not a big fan of Batman Begins and The Dark Knight. Now, everyone is entitled to their opinion. James Gunn is entitled to his opinion. When I've read these out on Movies TV Mad before, on my YouTube before. We've discussed this before. The man had every right, as a DC fan, as a director himself, to have an opinion, but it doesn't come across really well. The man, look, I think the man must, look, I hate to use this word, but I think that James Gunn may be an imbecile. I truly do. What kind of person, after they become famous, doesn't think, oh shit, I posted a lot of serious, disturbing shit before I became famous. I better go on the computer and delete all this shit, or get someone, an analyst, just to delete everything. Because I wouldn't even know how to delete a bunch of tweets on Twitter. You'd have to go down everything. I mean, it would take forever to find the stuff that you wanted to delete, right? I don't think there's an easy way of doing that. And I mean, I've had my Twitter since 2013, so whatever's on there is on there, right? But, I mean, the opinion is, I mean, look, he's entitled to his opinion, but in my mind, and I think most people's mind, it's utter lunacy. Batman Begins is one of my favourite Batman movies, comic book movies of all time. And The Dark Knight is the godfather of comic book movies. We all know that. Most people adore that film. But when you make the type of films James Gunn does, I'm not surprised he may have this view. Now, as I said earlier, he claimed his Facebook was hacked. He never said word for word, I never said that. All he ever did was say that my Facebook was hacked. I'm of the opinion that he wrote this stuff. I genuinely am. And I think, as I say, I think the man's an idiot. Why would you leave that stuff up there now that you're working with DC? It's absolute insanity. But now let's get to something that's more important to most of us, and it's Matt Reeves, because I care about Matt Reeves. I think he's a very nice man, a very talented man, who's made many a wonderful movie, And I'd hate to hear that he's not very well, that he's seriously ill, right? You know, or even dying. Now, I don't know. I heard rumours way before Grace Randolph spilled that he was seriously ill. I don't know how true any of that is, boys and girls. I really don't. I can't clarify any of it. But anyway, this is an article from a place called That Dark Place, or is it the Park Place? I'm not sure. I've never heard of them before. I don't know how much we can trust this article, but let's get into it. Matt Reeves no longer directing The Batman Part 2. Sequel set for production in 2026 with no director attached. The Batman Part 2 is moving forward, but apparently not under the direction of Matt Reeves. According to a newly released listing from Production Weekly, Reeves is no longer attached as director of the upcoming DC sequel and is now only credited as the film's screenwriter. The production is currently aiming for a March 2026 shoot in London with a revised release date of October the 1st, 2027. The news marks a dramatic shift for a franchise that Reeves helped shape from the ground up. The 2022 release of The Batman was met with critical acclaim and a strong box office, both very factual. So this claims that someone else is going to direct this movie format. It's very, very bizarre. If he is ill, or even dying, and I don't know if he is, let's be clear about that. It's very, very tragic and sad. Films go in the queue. A film's not important. This is the man's life. He's obviously, if he is ill, he's with his family, with his friends. Of course, it's a horrible thing. A film isn't important. Let's be absolutely clear about this. I don't know how true this illness is. According to Grace Randolph, it's serious, right? Serious. She tried to hint that the man is basically dying. That's what she basically said. Grace knows a lot of stuff. There's no question about that. So, yeah, that's what they're trying to say here. That he won't be directing and he will just be credited as a writer. So who's going to direct this movie? Someone, I assume, that Matt has chosen to do it for him. So at this moment in time, and I can only call this a rumour. I can't call this fact. I can call this a rumour that Matt is writing this movie. It's being directed. It's still happening, but it won't be directed by Matt Reeves. I mean, look, I've got a few theories here. I'm very uncomfortable about this entire situation. I don't want to end up with egg on my face, and I'm happy. I'm always happy to be wrong and taken out. But in the back of my mind, I'm very cynical about this entire situation. I believe that Matt is not ill. I believe that's something that WB are putting out there, just like they said when, they claimed that Zack Snyder was stepping back from Justice League because of the death of his daughter, which was a very serious, tragic thing. You'd expect someone to take a back seat from work or a movie if their daughter had just tragically taken their own life. You get it, right? I could be wrong. I don't believe he's ill. I think WB have leaked that out there to justify why he's not attached to this movie anymore. Maybe he's fallen out with Gunn like James Wan did. James Wan is nowhere near WB on New Line Cinema anymore. They drove him out. A much more talented director than James Gunn. And going back to the Christopher Nolan thing, Christopher Nolan is one of the greatest directors of our time and any time, and a much better director than James Gunn will ever be. How dare he criticize his superiors and betters? Anyway, so I have doubts that Matt is actually ill. I just think this is a way of justifying him being off this movie. I don't believe that this film is going forward. I don't think it's being directed by someone else. I think they're replacing his film with Brave and the Bold or another Batman movie. Probably the Batman-Superman team-up, and this Batman 2 will never see the light of day. Again, I'm happy to take the L on this. That's how I feel about the situation. And I must be honest with you, my viewers. showing leading Warner Brothers to announce a full trilogy with Reeves at the helm, but the sequel has since experienced multiple production delays and now the departure of its original director. Now they're speaking like this is fact, but I don't know these people. I can't tell you if this is fact. Matt Reeves originally pitched The Batman as the first installment of a grounded trilogy exploring a younger, less refined version of Bruce Wayne, drawing inspiration from noir detective stories and the crime sagas like Zodiac and Chinatown. Reeves emphasized a psychological depth to Gotham's characters in interviews following the first film's release. Reeves spoke about building a rich world that could sustain multiple films and spin-offs, including the HBO Max Penguin series, which released to critical acclaim. That was supposed to be part of the Batman 2, by the way. Maybe. Now, if I'm wrong that Matt's not ill, maybe the situation was that Matt knew that the Batman 2 movie was never going to see the light of day. So he, at the very least, wanted a portion of it to come out, and that's maybe why they made the Penguin series on Max and on HBO. Maybe that's why this happened. Because it's very odd for a director to take a portion of his movie and his work and just slam it on a streaming show. So maybe he knew he wasn't going to make it to make the Batman 2, if I'm wrong about him being ill. And look, I'm not trying to be disrespectful. I just don't trust this studio. And I don't think any of us do at this point. While Matt Reeves has not publicly disclosed the reason behind his step back, speculation has been quietly building for months. In fact, Falls writer Paul Tassi hinted at the situation back in January 2025. I have heard what Reeves is going through, Tassi said, and no, I'm not. Yeah, so I have heard what Reeves is going through, Tassi said, and no, I'm not going to say what it is, but I will say it's serious and people really need to back off. So as I say, if my cynicism is wrong and the man is really ill, I'm devastated and gutted. He always came across as a wonderful man, and I'm devastated about any human being suffering and maybe dying. So this is horrible. No film is more important than a human life. So, there you go. This early reference suggested that those in media circles were already aware of a serious personal issue affecting Reeves, but chose not to elaborate out of respect for him. Now, this is brilliant by the media. A round of applause for every, access media, entertainment journalist for keeping this under their hat. When you look at what Grace Randolph did, and what Grace Randolph did was utterly wrong. But Grace Randolph hasn't got any morals, and that's the truth, right? She can try and justify why she did what she did, but she doesn't have any morals, and we all know that. The issue re-entered the public spotlight last month when YouTube personality Grace Randolph referenced Reeves' situation in a video, controversially comparing it to that of the late Chadwick Boseman. Her statement drew significant backlash online, with many criticising the comparison and inappropriate and speculative. Despite Reeves stepping back as director, the Batman 2 remains in active development. Robert Pattinson, Colin Farrell, Jeffrey Wright, and Andy Serkis are all supposed to be in the movie. So basically, they're all supposed to return, and Reeves remains on board as co-writer alongside Mattson Tomlin. Now, who knows? Maybe Mattson might actually, if this is still happening, going to direct this movie. I have no idea. The Batman Part 2 has been delayed multiple times, with its most recent release date now set for October 2027. These delays have unfolded amid a broader restructuring of DC's cinematic universe under a new co-head, James Gunn and Peter Safran, who are launching a rebooted continuity known as Gods and Monsters. However, Reeves' Batman films are part of a separate continuity called the DC Elseworlds banner, meaning they are not directly connected to Gunn's new Superman-led reboot, but we know that's not what Gunn wanted. He wanted everything to be amalgamated together. As of this Writing, Warner Brothers has not named a replacement director for Matt Reeves in The Batman Part 2. The studio may be waiting to make a formal announcement of seeking someone who can preserve Reeves' creative vision. Some fans online have speculated about potential successors, but no credible reports have emerged. With pre-production reportedly set to begin in early 2026, the search for a new director will be a major point of interest over the coming months. So, look, if the man is ill, I'm absolutely devastated for him. But I can't prove any of this is true. So let's calm down a bit until we actually have context to this. But wow, if the man is ill, or even worse, I'm so sorry for him and his family. If this is something a little bit more nefarious from WB Gunn and Saffron, then I will be very, very upset.